Since I was a little kid, I was studying. I was brought up in a Christian church,
Mm.
and even there, I remember when I was like 15, 14, 15, 16 years old, picking up other like philosophers and reading, I would read Plato and
Yeah.
Socrates and all that. I was incredibly curious about those things. I was getting a lot of insights that I journaled where I looked back and I was like, oh, that was like a very Buddhist approach, but I didn't even know what Buddhism was.
Right.
And so I've always been this very curious person. Anything that's philosophical, and I picked up a novel because the Fountain has a novel,
Yeah.
not thinking it was going to be a philosophical book, and then it becoming incredibly philosophical for me.
Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences in strength, physically, mentally, and spiritually. I'm Michael Krukowski, host of the Strength Connection, and I'm so grateful that you can join me today. So in these episodes, I connect with some of the most inspiring and successful individuals to chop it up and learn from true life experiences that have helped them become who they are, the strongest versions of themselves. One of the greatest ways I've always learned the most important lessons is through stories. We all have them, and they make us who we are. So let's dive in. Here we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast, Technology. Here we go. So thank you for joining me, and Mike Bledsoe. It's really an honor to have you. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no doubt. So you are in a beautiful look. I wish I could do this in person with you because you have got the best scenery of anybody I think I've had on this show. So which part of Hawaii, which part of Hawaii are you in again?
We're on the island of Oahu. We're on the North Shore in a little town called Waialua, which is next to Haleiwa, which is basically where a lot of the surf culture is at. So in the winter, just a mile or two down the beach, you can get some of the biggest waves in the world over here.
Ooh.
And so Waimea Bay. And so heavy surf culture. Yeah, I was out doing they're called OC1. They're those one man canoe with they've got like
Mhm.
the log next to you. So it's like there's two
Oh,
pieces.
right. Okay. Yep.
So I learned how to ride one of those yesterday, and I'm gonna see if I can catch a wave on one of those. They're pretty
Okay.
fragile, but they're like for speed.
Mhm.
But yeah, we've been hanging out, playing in the water, meeting some
Mhm.
locals, getting some water sports in. So good.
You can ride waves on those canoes.
That's what the guy said. Well, one thing I've learned, I've been in the water a lot. You can ride a wave in anything. I've ridden a wave on
Yeah.
on a raft before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, just the bumpiness of the ride might be a little bit different depending on when you
yeah,
use it, but you could definitely ride it.
yeah, yeah.
Nice, man. Oh, that's awesome. That's great. So, I mean, you've been a busy guy in this world of strength. I guess the best question I wanted to start with, like, with somebody you've been in so many different, worn so many different hats in the world of strength, like a cocktail party introduction. Someone says, "What do you do?" What do you say now?
What do I say now? I tell people that I consult coaches that happen to have influence on how to refine their message and how to monetize their following and create long-lasting products and services
Mhm.
that allow them to have really successful businesses and impact a lot of people.
It's good. Good explanation. Perfect. Yeah. So, well, I say that because you've been in the strength world from Barbell Shrugged, really in the mindset world, but explored a lot of holistic approaches of strength work as well. And, why I called this the strength connection was because I always thought it was the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, all of it is connected together. And sometimes we steer into one more than the other, but if you don't connect all of them together, then you're missing some sort of fulfillment in there. And I think you've really taken that and brought that into many different companies as well as just the work that you do. So, I thought that was a really interesting just description to start with.
Yeah, I think what you're describing, what I call it a an integrated approach.
Mhm.
And so every company that I've had has actually just been a piece. And
Mhm.
that's why I've had so many companies, is because I keep going, I keep thinking the next one is like I get this vision. I have a really high level of excitement. I
Mhm.
may partner with somebody. I get the business going, and a lot of times I also think that this business is going to fulfill that itch, scratch that itch that I didn't get scratched in the previous business, or the itch developed during the previous business because I wasn't even aware that this was a thing.
Mhm.
And so then I launched the new thing, and I get about 3-4 years into it, and I go, yeah, it's not quite there. And to take this animal that I created and to pivot it, just it's not it's I didn't brand it right, or I didn't do something right in the
Mhm.
beginning that really sent it off in a trajectory. So Barbell Shrugged is a good example of that. It was a podcast, it was a YouTube channel, there were training programs. It's all built around being a really strong weightlifter, CrossFitter,
Mhm.
like, and for me to and I started getting way more into the mindset side of things, and we explored that a bit there. But to the degree in which I wanted to take it was much further than, well, one, business partners were
Mhm.
interested in taking it
Yep.
because what we were doing was already working, which was true.
Right.
And that's a mistake people make in business. I see it all the time in entrepreneurship, and I'm no different, which is like I become interested in something new. So then I think that I need to take this new thing and put it into a business that's already working and change things that are already working.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a little bit of artist in me that
Mhm.
that can wreak some havoc at times. So
Yeah.
there's been instances where like that where I was like, yeah, the audience wants A, my business partners want to give them A, and they're happy giving them A, but I want to give them B. So,
Right.
it's better if I just move on instead of
Right.
trying to say, I'm going to take the audience and then I'm going to steer them where I want them to go. It's
Yeah.
like, you know what? I'm really good at building new businesses, so I don't really have the fear of like, oh, if I leave this business, then I won't have anything.
Yeah.
So it's really lent that that way of being has really lent itself to me starting different businesses that have focused on different things that over time, what I'm looking at now is how do I take the previous 7 businesses I've ever done and actually bring all of me to the next thing,
Mhm.
and also intentionally creating something that is malleable as I shift, so
Right.
that it's not a snapshot in time that I'm trying to continue to sell years later.
Right. That's an interesting. Do you think personally just kind of how you're made up, like you like the challenge of going into something new, or do you think that's kind of a more of a natural evolution of you kind of surpass it and just the path to grow means you almost graduate out of what you're doing at the moment to go seek something else?
It doesn't happen for everybody, so it's definitely a
Mhm.
personal thing. I think there's like there it's part of my personality that's really a gift, and then there's also the shadow of that gift. And so the shadow of the gift is I do things that work, and if I keep giving it attention, it would grow to be really big and successful and all that.
Mhm.
And probably if I would have stuck with the thing at Barbell Shrugged, I would be making the most money,
Mhm.
possible type of thing
Right.
up until this point. But I am more, I'm less interested in money and I'm more interested in creating. And
Mhm.
so if I, if I have this obsessiveness about me, is once my mind gets its hooks on something
Yeah.
that I see as can be transformational for individuals or the world,
Mhm.
I can't let it go. Like I'll wake up in the middle of the night with ideas. I'll wake up in the morning with ideas. It's like it latches on, and I could be
Mhm.
out canoeing out in the ocean or something, and then ideas are still popping in. It's like the subconscious mind latches on.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I can almost be a slave to that. But also, so the shadow of that is like I've explained the shadow of that a bit, and then the
Mhm.
benefit is obviously like getting obsessed about innovation
Sure.
and that benefiting myself and other people. But it's how do I my challenge now is how do I build a business that is flexible enough to change with me?
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's because it's you
Yeah,
need flexibility, but it also needs to be built on principles in there too that need to be,
exactly.
centered. So I mean, that's about as good of a example of an entrepreneur's personality as I've ever heard before. Is just you go in just want to. Have you always has that always been your mindset? Like from early on, like was this a mindset? Did you know you were going to be like more of an entrepreneurial spirit as you were growing up, or is this something that evolved over time?
No, quite the opposite. I tell people I was a reluctant entrepreneur.
Okay.
And so growing up, my dad owned his own construction business. I saw him go through big peaks and valleys, and I saw him struggle. And I told myself I didn't want to have that lifestyle. I wanted a steady paycheck. And, but I also had a call to adventure. I
Mm.
also I was raised to be, I'm a bit intense and I like daredevil type shit. Like I'll jump on waves that are too big for me. Uh, and just like enjoy getting thrashed around where other
Hmm.
people just don't like that shit.
Sure.
So I had a bit of adventure. So what I ended up doing is out of an act of, it's funny at the time I didn't recognize it as such. Looking back, it's so easy. Out of an act of rebellion, I joined the Navy and, got my, two paychecks a month.
When
And
did you join? How old were you?
I was 19.
Okay.
So, and I wanted to be a Navy SEAL, which
Hmm.
I did go to Buds, but I did fail out of that program like 3 days into Hell Week, actually. Um,
Okay.
yeah. And so did 4 years in the Navy. And while I was in the Navy, so I was in this mindset when I went in, I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna do 20 years as a SEAL. I don't know. I probably won't make it.
Hmm.
I have this belief that I'll probably die before I'm 30. No big deal. I'm just gonna like live with a
Hmm.
lot of intensity between now and then. I'm just gonna go like really hard. So
Sure.
I really didn't even think about longevity at the time.
Hmm.
It was more of like, yeah, how can I just be the baddest
Sprint
dude
as fast as
as possible?
possible. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But while I was in, I ended up suffering an injury at Buds, and then ended up they were trying to roll me back, and I was going to repeat everything. And I'm 19 at the time, so I was like, you know
Hmm.
what? I'll just quit, and I'll come back after a couple of years. Because
Mm.
the idea is, a lot of guys, I think the majority of people who graduate, it's their second or third time
I was gonna
through
say
the
usually it's not the
program.
it's not the first time right through. Usually it takes a little bit to
Yeah, and the
get
average
all the way
age is
through.
like 26 or 27. I'm
Okay. Yeah.
19. I didn't realize this before I got in. I got there and I was like, oh, I'm like one of the youngest, least developed. Like I could tell like I just hadn't met my physical maturity the same
Yeah.
way some of these other guys had. I was like, oh, okay,
Young,
this
young,
is
young, young, dumb, and full of fill in the blank. So,
that's right. So I was like, you know what? I'm still good. I still put my best foot forward, but yeah, by the time I got to the end of it, and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna roll you back," and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I think, and my hip was so tore up, I was like, I think I need a year or two to be able to approach this training again. So I left that, and I kept trying to go back to training, but I kept getting denied to go back because the command I was at really needed me, and so even when I was getting out of the Navy, I was trying to go back, but I had advanced in rank so far that there's a lot of just technical
sure.
stuff about the military. Like you
Yeah.
don't get to choose where you go. like you
Right.
don't get a
Okay.
lot
Yeah.
of choices.
Right.
So your choices are highly limited. And so I was limited from being able to make that choice. And so I think it was about a year before I got out. I go through the ships. I was living on the ship and was on a deployment, and I was looking for something to read in the library, and I pick up this book, and it's called The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand.
Yep.
And I'd never heard of Ayn Rand. I had never heard of The Fountainhead, but for some reason I thought I'm just going to read. I'll try reading this book. And so I picked that book and I started reading it, and I felt this fire inside of me just start to ignite. And I it was that book was the first time in my life I was able to recognize myself as an individual and as somebody that had something special to offer the world, and recognizing that every single person on this planet has something really special to offer the world if they would just let themselves do it. And in that book, there's a guy, an architect who defies all the standards of society,
Hmm.
and is able to overcome the peer pressure of the architectural industry and really create something really innovative and new, and most people couldn't even comprehend what he was doing or digest it, and he was
Hmm.
thrown out of society. And there were a few people that really understood him, and they were of the same, cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
And I'm reading this book, and I just felt this fire ignite, and I go, I'm not here to take orders. I'm supposed to create something. And I looked around, I'm like, this is just a gray, dull place where I have a few choices to make, and I don't, and I'm being steered, I'm being told what to do, and I'm told where to be and when to be. I'm like, this is not good for my spirit. And so that's what caused me to get out. And that's what caused me to, when I got out, I had no idea what I was going to do. I just had no idea of what was possible,
Hmm.
but I knew that it wasn't going to happen there. So I just got out and started going to school. While I was in school, I discovered weightlifting. I discovered CrossFit. It was actually one of my Navy buddies who's a SEAL. He came and visited and
Hmm.
introduced me to CrossFit in 2006. I thought it was dumb when I first saw it. And then I ended up trying it 6 months later,
Hmm.
enjoyed it, decided it because I'm a weightlifter and all these CrossFitters suck at weightlifting. I should find the closest
Hmm.
CrossFit gym and become a coach so I can help out. This is 2007 at this time,
Yeah.
realizing there are no gyms in the entire state of Tennessee for CrossFit.
Okay.
Oh, we should open one. So me and a buddy of mine opened one. And I'm running this gym for like a year and a half before I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur was.
Hmm.
And then a year and a half in, I'm broke. I'm living in the gym because I just can't afford it. I was looking at getting a job across the street at AutoZone to pay the bills. And, I was treating the CrossFit gym like a club. I was charging like less than $100 a month for
Hmm.
membership. I barely made enough just to cover the rent on the
Yeah.
spot.
Mhm.
So I recruited a business partner, Doug, and he's like, yeah, but we got to take the business seriously. I was like, I'm ready. I'm just a year and a half in. I'm broke. I'm ready. I'd rather put all my attention into the business than to go get a job and split my
Right. Hmm.
attention because I'd already dropped out of the master's program for kinesiology to focus on the business
Gotcha. Hmm.
because I realized I couldn't do both well at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I remember we had downloaded these business seminar videos and we're watching it. And this guy started talking about the type E entrepreneur. And he describes the personality of a type E entrepreneur. And Doug, my business partner, turns his head over at me and goes, "That's you." And I was like, and I'd been paying attention to this guy at this business seminar and thinking he's just the greatest thing ever. And like, I'm learning so much and our
Yeah.
business was improving. And then he drops that one. And I go, oh, I am an entrepreneur. And
Mm.
there was, I remember that moment sitting in that office, like underneath my, above that was where I'd thrown a mattress and sleeping above the office. And I was like, oh, my identity shifted in that moment. I'm an entrepreneur. And
Yeah.
all those things, all those good things he said about entrepreneurs, that's me. And so that was a huge and pivotal moment where I took that identity on and then everything started working.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You mentioned a couple epiphanies in there, and going back to when you were reading that book, The Fountainhead, and you had
Mhm.
that kind of fire. Looking back on that, do you feel, were you searching for an answer of something to do, or was it more like you just read this book, like, oh, this seems pretty interesting, and just as you were reading it, all these thoughts kind of started popping up at that moment?
Yeah, I wasn't searching for anything.
Yeah.
I still like even when I got out, like thought about going back in the Navy.
Mm.
I wasn't looking for a way out. I mean, since I was a little kid, I was studying. I was brought up in a Christian church,
Hmm.
and even there, I remember when I was like 15, 14, 15, 16 years old, picking up other like philosophers and reading, I would read Plato and
Yeah.
Socrates and all that. Just, I was incredibly curious about those things.
Hmm.
I was getting a lot of insights that I had journaled where I looked back and I was like, oh, that was like a very Buddhist approach, but I didn't even know what Buddhism was.
Right.
And so I've always been this very curious person, anything that's philosophical. And I picked up a novel because The Fountain has a novel,
Yeah.
not thinking it was going to be a philosophical book.
Hmm.
And then it becoming incredibly philosophical for me.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had that with Way of a Peaceful Warrior. That was the first book that I really read that was a novel that just got so much of it. I was reading all these other things that was kind of trying to find answers for stuff, and then just picked up a book just to read a story, and all of a sudden it just has the answers in there. So
Uh,
yeah, it's interesting how those
nice.
roll. So that difference then when like you saw that type E entrepreneur and then like that was that shift when things started changing. What was the process and what was that shift like? Because I think this is an interesting point that I see of oftentimes we go into entrepreneurship, but especially in the coaching world, we still act like a coach and not a business owner. What was the
Right.
differences of like what you were doing before to how you started to act afterwards?
Uh, I went from feeling resistance towards doing things like tracking numbers to
Mm,
excited to track the numbers
mm,
because when I wasn't a business, before I didn't even consider myself to be a business owner, I was a coach in this business, like all these other things where I just had to do it in order to, as a necessary evil is the way is how I talked about it.
mhm.
And went from that to going, oh, I'm going to become a really good entrepreneur. There's nothing, once I decide I'm going to be something or do something, it's how do I become the best at that? How do I, like,
Okay.
I got to go all the way. There's no like, yeah, I'm going to be like a pretty good entrepreneur,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm going to be the best I can possibly be. And I started studying other entrepreneurs. I was like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
Like I remember reading the book by Walter Isaacson on Steve Jobs. It was
Yeah.
just
Mhm.
like, so that was also inspiring in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, I went from resisting to excited. That's really
Mhm.
at the crux of it, of everything. And there were a ton of things that I still found resistance around, but
Sure.
it wasn't the same type of resistance. It was more of like, this is just difficult. I don't want to focus on this because I got too many difficult things
Sure.
happening at once. I need to focus over here, so I'm going to resist that.
Yeah.
But before it was just like, yeah, if it was business, like if I was too focused on, it's like I realized I could be an entrepreneur without being hyper focused on, like the reason didn't have to be to make money only. And
Mm.
I had some stories around money and wealth and being a good
Sure.
or a bad person.
Yeah, as many people do, right? So
Hmm.
so that difference of resistance, so is it safe to say like the resistance wasn't as much on your own capabilities and your own self, but maybe more of like just skills that you needed to build and stuff like that? Because that's things that we all need to learn. Like you need to learn how to do specific things, but if the you have the mindset around I'm capable of doing this, and that's a principal foundation,
Yeah.
then it's
I
things
think
that you can build and develop on.
primarily I wanted to be seen as a good person by everyone around me. And if I gave business too much attention, then I wouldn't, then I might be seen as someone who's greedy and I didn't want to be perceived as such. So I just wouldn't dedicate myself to the skills. It wasn't necessarily that I can see that now. At the time I felt like the skills were just hard, but I
Mhm.
now recognize, oh, the skills are actually fairly simple, but
Mm.
I have a reputation to maintain. And so
Ah, okay.
even if no one knows I'm doing it, it's still something that I avoided at the time. So I think that
Mm.
was more of it.
That's it. Okay. That's interesting. It's kind of that difference. I remember when I talked with Rafe Kelly and he talked about complex versus complicated.
Hmm.
And I think oftentimes we believe things are complicated when they're actually just they're complex, which means there's a lot of different ways that you can get there. Where complicated is he used the analogy of like going into space. It's like, yeah, that's complicated, but it's math. Like it's a specific thing of what to do, and you just need to do the work in order to get there.
Right.
Versus something like playing chess, like being a chess master. There's, millions of ways that you can, play a game of chess. There's a million different ways that you can be, victorious on it. So it's a different approach to do it. It kind of seems like it's similar.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So then you got into, I mean, a lot of the work on the physical side, and then really started transitioning into the mindset, side of business. Did that come early on, or like when did that start to go where you like realized you wanted to make a shift and maybe kind of graduated past the physical side as much and wanted to go into more of like the mentality?
Yeah, I had a big mental shift in 2013. I went to a marketing conference. Same guy that I was watching the videos of in like 2009.
Mhm.
I went to a live conference in 2013 that he was holding, and I left that conference going, I'm getting a little rain on me right now. I'm gonna walk inside. I go to this conference and I just get this feeling at the conference. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to eat some psychedelic mushrooms to help me grok all this information because like the information is just overwhelming.
Hmm.
And I heard Tim Ferriss likes to do that every 6 months to hit the reset button. I was like, you know
Hmm.
what, I'll give it a shot. So I do that, and then I'm thinking I'm gonna like get all these notes down, and my notebook never makes it out of my backpack
Okay.
at the park. And I just had some really deep realizations, and there was some like really epic perspective shifts that happened during that experience. That there's a couple, one was I realized that my entire life up to this point was due to my choices, and how much of my life was actually my responsibility, and how much I was had been previously believing that there were other outside forces outside of myself that were causing the majority of my difficulties. And just realizing, oh, I'm the one that's responsible. And I actually had the experience of the whole world collapsing down inside of me, and having the real felt experience that everything that I'm experiencing that I think is outside of me is actually inside of me. And so there was that, which is a pretty huge epiphany on its own.
What was that feeling? Was that a holy shit feeling, like scary, or is it more kind of like a relief, almost like a
It
weight
was,
falling off the shoulders?
it was an awe.
Mm.
It was awesome. Like the real use of the word awesome. It was
Okay,
like
yeah.
I was in awe. I was like, oh, whoa. It felt very empowering. Like I all of a sudden I knew what to do. I was like, oh, I now that I know that I'm the one that's responsible, I'm gonna do so. I now know what to do about it. But before I didn't believe that I was the one that was responsible.
Mhm.
So I never thought about doing anything about it because I didn't think there was anything to be done about it because I wasn't the one that was responsible. I didn't have the ability to respond. So, so that happened for me. And then another thing that hit me was that I learned was that I really was not a good listener at that time. I would listen in a classroom, I would read, I could study, but when it came to other people talking to me, I was just waiting to talk,
Mhm.
and planning out my strategy. And I'm 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 very good at debate and things like that. So I'll be like in analysis of what someone's saying, and coming up with my own talking points and all that.
Mhm.
I used to do that a lot less now. Actually, I almost dislike it now. I watch my mind start doing it. I'm like, get out of here. Let's just connect with somebody instead of
Yeah.
trying to debate them. And
Because
yeah,
it's fun. It can be fun. Like, I mean, it's fun sometimes to debate,
totally.
people on it, where you're diving into, especially if it's something that you're passionate about. But at the end, usually after like a deep debate like that, and the things settle down after 20, 30 minutes, sometimes it's like, what the hell was I so, well, why
Yeah.
was I so steamed
Yeah.
about that? It's almost kind of like that post reflection.
Yeah, yeah. Jordan Peterson talks about it
Mhm.
in with his personality test that he has, is just
Mhm.
being agreeable or disagreeable.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm really far on the disagreeable scale.
Mhm.
So I probably find joy in just being in some type of
Yeah.
playing devil's advocate. Like I don't even believe something. I'll like throw some thing, the other side in there, and people are like, I can't believe you believe. I was like, I don't believe that. I'm just arguing for it. It's not.
Yeah. Well, isn't it something too that if somebody disagrees with you, you naturally assume that they're smarter versus when they do agree with you? So there's actually there's an intellectual like moment in there, because if somebody says, "Oh yeah, absolutely, I agree with you, Mike, 100%," like then okay, it's kind of gone. But if I say absolutely not, I don't agree with it, you're leaning into that conversation. So you assume like somebody's challenging your beliefs. Do they know something that I don't? I heard it's kind of like almost like a biological signal that goes. That's why politicians oftentimes will lean so deep into like absolutely not. I disagree with that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. What I do know that I've learned about myself over the years is I used to be addicted to conflict.
Mhm.
So any opportunity in any moment to create a little bit, I would take it.
Yeah.
So
What is that? Is that do you think, is that trying to control things at all times of, and because I mean build a to build a business, to like to go from grassroots and put that intensity behind it, like you need to put a lot of energy and focus into that. And it's almost like sometimes if you feel like if you lose sight of it for a minute, then maybe everything will collapse down. Is that kind of part of it? What do you think?
I think a lot of mine was a lot of my desire, the addiction to conflict, what came from as a man, that's my age, we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and it was actually safer to express our love in a way that was it was safer to be tough and to fight and express ourselves with our fists or yelling than it was to express our love. And
Yeah.
so I really believe that, and I've done a lot of introspection on this, is like the addiction to conflict is actually an addiction to the desire to feel loved. And being in recognition of that and then saying, oh, what is it I really desire in this moment? Well, it's connection. Okay, can I put the conflict down? Can I have peace?
Mhm.
And the answer is yes. So yeah, when you're asking me that, I'm going, I think that's actually the thing that's a level deeper. It's like what you were asking, I agree, and that's sitting on top of I want to
Mhm.
be loved.
Mm. Yeah. Do you think with a lot of coaches that are building their business and stuff like that, is that one of the big struggles that you see with people at the beginning? Is kind of just that, like, what is the main like struggles when people come to you and you're helping them with their business and kind of get their following and be their authentic self? What are the main struggles that you're seeing from people that come to you?
I think people have so little practice at being authentic that, and they confuse authenticity with sharing their stories and their feelings.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, this was hard today. I'm being authentic. I'm letting people
It
know that
is,
it's a
yeah.
hard day, right? It's like, yeah, whatever.
It's like the term vulnerable, like you think it needs to be
R-
tears, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Or that vulnerability equals authenticity. If I'm vulnerable, then I'm being authentic. I'm like, that's not that. Sometimes when you're being authentic, you're vulnerable. But when I think about authenticity, and that's an ever evolving conversation for me, is like, what does it mean to be authentic?
Yeah.
And is I'm reading a book right now, and it's called The Greatest Salesman in the World. It's fantastic. And there's a line in that book that says, "I will accent my differences and hide my similarities." And one of the things that, and I'll do the same thing for the goods I sell,
Hmm.
right? And so in America, I mean, I think in most of the world, as individualistic as America is compared to the rest of the world, everybody is still wants to fit in, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you go to school, you want to fit in. Like you can look at your entire life and just you're gonna find 99% fit in and less than 1% stand out, right?
Right.
And so the people who are the best marketers, the people that get the best clients, the people who are able to attract those things are they stand out, legitimately stand out and are different. And so when coaches come into the space, I think that they're very focused on I need to quit my day job, so I need to make enough money to do
Hmm.
that. They have all these fears about making ends meet that they spend too much time looking what other people are doing and trying to emulate. And there's even a lot of people that tell you to copy what other people are doing until you figure it out for yourself. And you'll get mediocre results that way. I've been in business long enough where people are like, I built this sales funnel and it worked really well for me. I'll basically copy and paste it over for
Hmm.
you. Well, it doesn't work the same for me. Like it may be good, but it's not going to be as good as it is for you because that worked for you. The I think most coaches fall into a trap of copying what other people are doing unconsciously and not displaying what makes them unique. And so I remember maybe about 3 years ago, it became all of a sudden, I had a company called the Strong Coach, and we're teaching health and fitness coaches how to grow their businesses.
Hmm.
And there were all of a sudden there was all these coaches coaching dads who needed to lose weight. It's like the dad coaching market just fucking exploded.
Yep.
And it was probably because one or two guys figured out that niche. They were highly qualified for it. It was something they were incredibly passionate about, and they just threw themselves into it. And then someone else knows, like, you know what, I'm a dad and I'm passionate about helping
Right.
dads too. And the next thing you know, you've got, 1,000, you know, dad
Yeah.
weight loss coaching programs that are also kind of like a men's group, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that trend started. And now when I see someone go into like, and 2 years into that, I see someone going into dad coaching, I'm going, you're gonna have to be more unique than that now.
Right.
So because we have a global reach. That means everyone else has a global reach, which
Right.
means that back in the day, your niche was your geography.
Right.
And then that expanded, and now your niche is your language, and then expands again. It's like, well, now your niche has to be the best niche you could ever have is showing up as authentically as you are. And
Yeah.
and knowing who you're helping, it's good. Like my niche that I'm focused on right now is military veterans.
Hmm.
And so, but inside of the world of military veterans, I'm going to have to become even more niche.
Right.
So there's 19 million US based veterans. There's 250,000 new veterans every year.
Hmm.
And they are all very different from each other in a lot of ways. And so what I need a niche product, niche service,
Yeah. Hmm.
niche messaging, and to do all those things, I've got to really show up authentically. And
Right.
so that is highlight my differences and hide my similarities.
That's interesting. That's an interesting way of putting it in there because I've seen it for a while, and I had this myself of that fear of niching down into a specific market. And I think it comes from you don't want to exclude anybody because I think as coaches, most people get into the coaching business because you want to help people, you like people, you want to like serve others. And
That's
like,
what coaches say,
yeah,
but
okay.
they're actually scared that they're not going to get clients
Okay.
if they niche down.
Hmm.
Yeah, every time.
Okay.
Oh, I just want to be able to. I don't want to have to turn anybody away. What bullshit. This is this is
You're
all
afraid
about
nobody's
you.
going to knock on the door. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't. They're afraid they're going to turn someone away that would have stumbled. Because here's the thing. That's what worked, right? I became a coach. I got certified. A handful of people got to know
Hmm.
me. People referred me. People stumble into my door
Right.
with pure luck in a way.
Hmm.
They stumble in, and then so human beings do something really funny is if it worked, then I can't stop doing it. And so,
Right.
like,
Hmm.
the first win that most coaches get is somebody stumbles in their door because they have no idea what they're doing
Yeah.
when it comes to marketing or messaging or letting people know what it
Hmm.
is that they do. They have no idea. Someone stumbles in, they go, well, that worked. I mean, I know people who make 20, $30,000 a month doing that. They're really good at what they do, and people are stumbling in their door all the time. And there's like, why can't I get more people? It's like we need to niche. And you're like, but
Yeah.
it's worked like this. I'm like,
Right.
exactly. You're working so hard to make it work for everybody
Hmm.
that nobody can hear you. And the only people that come to you is just they're just going to trickle in. You're
Yeah.
never going to get that flood that you're looking for.
Yeah.
But I find that it's a sense of scarcity that keeps
Okay.
people trapped.
Yeah. That makes I mean, it makes sense. Absolutely. Because well, like you said, it's like when you were in Barbell Shrugged and even said like you could probably make the most money if you just stayed on that, but it didn't feel authentically like what you wanted to
Hmm.
do in
Hmm.
there. And I think it's very easy to get it if you are making a decent living and there's some comfort in there to let go of that to do what you truly want, which now you're stepping into some discomfort again. Like everybody
Right.
says, oh, lean into discomfort. And we all know that term, but to actually do it and act on it is a challenging thing to do. So how do you get over that, or what's your advice to kind of work with that with somebody who is doing well, they are doing stuff, but they want to expand more and be more authentic?
I don't know. I'll let you know when I figure it out. But
Yeah. I love that answer. Yeah. Yeah.
well, if I look at my own life, I go into major discomfort.
Yeah.
There's something I feel very strongly about, and so I'm very authentic. And then it gets established, and I'm working, and money starts flowing in.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then there's business partners and employees and all this, and then there starts to become this pressure of like they started following me for that snapshot in time that spoke to them, and so they want me to stay the same. And so that there's also beliefs that sneak in. Is like, well, I keep changing, if I keep evolving, then it's not going to work anymore. And so what I can point at in my own life is there's these peaks of authentic self-expression where
Yeah.
really great things happen, and then comfort sets in just
Mhm.
little by little by little. No, you don't even notice it. She's like, I become more and more comfortable, and then one day I wake up, I'm like, man, I got so
Yeah.
comfortable to where now I'm bored,
Yeah.
and I go, oh, I got to shake things up, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, the work is how do I stay in that authentic self-expression
Yeah.
without and recognizing the comfort much more soon in the game and becoming more comfortable just being myself and being
Yeah.
authentic and like
Do you do you think with that then like that term even authentic, like it's I'm almost thinking like we think of it as a destination, like oh you arrive at being authentic, when in reality it seems it's a lot more like a journey, it's evolving, just like
yeah,
anything. It's like who's the politician that said about pornography? I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it. It's like it seems like the same thing with authenticity.
right,
Like it's hard to describe, but when you see somebody who is authentic, like you just feel it. It's a different energy.
totally, totally,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You're right, and it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's not a destination.
Mhm.
It's when I'm in it, I know it, and when I'm not in it, everything feels very difficult, and
Mhm.
there's like a level of excitement that's missing.
Yeah. So with how is that process for you? Like when you are going into a new challenge or a pro, what's your process that you see? Like, is it I start to feel like I'm getting comfortable and need to change, or is it kind of just the ideas come and it's just kind of sit and wait, let it happen? Like, how does that work for you?
I get I get very of uncomfortable is the word. I get very dissatisfied with the way things currently are.
Mhm.
I historically I've had really big swings. So I go from like yeah, like pure excitement and nothing can stop me. And then fast forward 2, 3 years later, just s sitting in a foreign country, having the best, having a great time, enjoying the fruits of the labor, but really sick and tired of my work. And so I have to get really, I notice I get really sick and tired of something. I have to be, the word I've used in the past is I have to be disgusted with where I'm at.
Okay.
So I get, but I think I reach disgust way faster than most people. Most people are like, things are great. Why are you complaining? And I'm going, this is disgusting. I can't even be with myself right now. I just,
Okay.
something has to change. Like, and I start looking, well, first thing I do is I start cutting things away.
Okay.
And which to people around me can sometimes seem kind of crazy. So like it was working or it's kind of working, but a lot of times things aren't working as planned. It's like, okay, I'm just going to cut this away. So, one thing I did this past year is I really just saw how little work I could commit to. So I was looking at what can I cut away, and
Mhm.
what's the least amount of work I can do to create the biggest financial results, so that
Mhm.
I can, with the expectation of I'm freeing my attention up for the next thing to really devote myself to, and I have no idea what it is.
Mhm.
And so I met some other people have similar stories. This I have a buddy, Jesse Elder. He operates very similarly,
Yeah.
and that
I
is like,
love Jesse. Jesse's amazing.
yeah, he's so
Yeah.
good. And yeah, the one thing we have in common, we have a lot in common, but
Yeah.
one of the things we have in common is like we can never know what's happening next. People around us are like, why are you cutting everything away? Why are you doing nothing? Why
Mhm.
are you creating all this space? And I just go, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And the only thing I know is that I'm creating space for something new. What's the new thing? I have no idea. I don't know what the new thing
Right.
is. I can't. It's like God doesn't let me know what the next thing is until I let go of the old thing. And
Yeah.
I think that's I have a hunch that's true for everybody, but people have never done it. So they do the safe thing, which is like really incremental and linear progress, or like I'm gonna totally replace my previous income with this new thing before I'll let go of my
Mhm.
job. And it's like, yeah, that thing's probably not going to be that cool. That new thing you're starting is by the time you actually are successful at it, it's probably going to feel a lot like your corporate gig you left.
Exactly. Right.
And so, I think it takes I don't think it's something that you're necessarily born with. I'm a big nurturer.
Mhm.
Even nature is nurture, is the way I see it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, well, it's just nature. It's like, well, what about your grandparents? That your grandparents were nurtured in a way that when you were born, it's like a large nurture and nature, same thing.
Absolutely.
And so I think I lost track of what I was talking
Yeah.
about. Let's see.
Well,
Help me out.
I like how you talked about stripping it away. That process of elimination
Oh,
is so powerful, and like I believe like you've put the line like unlearn first, then expand, and then stabilize. And
right.
I had a similar thing with my group. We call it recovery before discovery. Like we're so focused on how can we maximize and discover all of our capabilities of what we do. Well, the first thing you do is strip away the things that aren't serving you anymore to create that space to open it up. I think it's a hard thing that I found of getting into entrepreneur, and you have to just put yourself in that space of allowing yourself that time to be almost unproductive, to let these things come into your
Right.
mind. And
Right.
it's so easy to just get into the busy work over and over again. It's the same with like strength training. Like you can do a million exercises, or you can focus on a few very specific ones and get a lot done in a short period of time. It's kind of a similar framework.
Yeah. 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 And I'm with my fiance. We've been together for 3.5 years now,
Mhm.
and I'm the first entrepreneur she's ever been with, and I get reminded of that at times. Is like you're not working very hard. I'm like, yeah, trying not to. Uh,
Yeah,
and he's
it's a
like,
weird
I don't
mindset.
understand. It
Yeah.
was like, I was like, look, I promise you, if I just filled my day with work, that would be the worst thing I could possibly do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. It is. It's a different mindset to get into. That's why I think there's a very different description of a business owner versus an entrepreneur. It's like you can
Hmm.
jump in and you can just run your business over and over again and do it, but to actually have that time to think and to be it. And I think, as you said, it's like arriving at that authenticity, and that's going to evolve as you go on. And you see it from what you've done. And I heard, I listened to Jesse Elder speak at a conference earlier this year in Texas, and spoke about really the same thing. And what I saw from Jesse, which is so powerful, is he takes his time with how he speaks with every word. Where so many
Hmm.
people are so quick to like just keep speaking over and over again and fill the silence, when you actually step back and allow that silence to be itself. I think it's just as powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. The most powerful speakers do take their time.
Yeah. Yeah. So
They take up space.
yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mike, dude, this has been a blast having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time here and everything that you're doing. So, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
No doubt. If people want to check more of the workout that you're doing and everything that you got going on, what's the best place that they can go and see it?
Best place to see what I'm up to right now is just on my Instagram, Mike at underscore Bledsoe. Everything else that I'm doing right now either does not have a web presence or is in the middle of transition.
Mhm.
So I make announcements on my Instagram. In fact, if you really want to make sure that you see everything that I'm doing coming up, go to my Instagram account, Mike underscore Bledsoe. You can get there even if you don't have an Instagram account, and then click the link in my bio, and you can get on my newsletter. So I'll send out 2, 3, sometimes 4 emails in a week with little
Yep.
pieces of advice. And when something happens, I also use that to notify people. I tell people to come through Instagram to do the newsletter because on Instagram, about 3% of people see your posts.
Yeah.
So just because you're following somebody doesn't mean you're actually going to get notified of what's going on.
Yeah. No doubt. So
Yeah.
awesome. We got those in the show notes for you guys. Mike Bledsoe, thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate it.
Thanks
Guys,
for having me, Michael.
go check out Mike, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.